$1. That is what a cup of coffee costs in Vietnam. You sit outside. The street is loud. The coffee is strong, and your wallet barely notices. $7. Same size cup, similar beans, similar experience. 7 times the price. Now here's a question most people never actually ask. Why? Not just because Norway is expensive. That is not an answer. That is just restating the question with a different accent. The real answer touches on something that affects every single purchase you make, every trip you plan, every salary negotiation you ever have. And once you understand it, you will never look at a price tag the same way again. Most people stop at the first explanation. Norwegians earn more, so prices are higher. Simple. And they're not wrong, but they're missing something important. A Vietnamese coffee worker might earn around $300 a month. A Norwegian barista might earn around $3,000 a month. So wages explain part of the price difference, but here's what most people skip over. As a share of income, both people are paying roughly the same effort for that coffee. The Norwegian is not getting robbed. The Vietnamese person is not getting a miracle deal. Each price makes sense inside its own economy. This is the first big idea. Prices are not random. They are signals, and they speak a local language. But this still doesn't explain the mechanism. Why do wages differ so much in the first place? And why does that gap show up in a cup of coffee, but not in a smartphone? That's where it gets interesting. When you buy a coffee, you're not just paying for beans and hot water. You're paying for everything it took to get that cup to your table. The barista's time and training, the rent on the cafe space, the espresso machine and its maintenance, the electricity to run it, the insurance on the building, the regulations the owner had to comply with to open, the taxes on every step of that process. In Vietnam, most of those layers are thin. Rent is low, labor is affordable, regulation is lighter, taxes on small businesses are manageable. In Norway, every single layer is heavier. Rent is high. The barista must be paid a living wage set by strict labor agreements. Energy costs more. Every compliance requirement adds cost. The $7 coffee is not expensive because Norwegians decided to be fancy. It's expensive because the entire cost of operating in Norway is built into that price. The cafe owner is not getting rich. They're just surviving in a high-cost environment. This is the second big idea. The price of a coffee is a summary. It compresses an entire society's cost structure into one small number. Now here's something strange. A smartphone costs roughly the same in Vietnam and Norway. A new laptop costs roughly the same. A flight between two cities, a camera, a pair of running shoes. Why does coffee follow local prices, but a phone does not? The answer is actually elegant. Some goods travel across borders. Phones are made in factories and shipped everywhere. If they were cheaper in one place, everyone would just import from there until prices equalized. But a coffee cannot be shipped. A haircut cannot be exported. A taxi ride stays local. Rent stays local. Services and local products are stuck in their home market, so their prices reflect local conditions, local wages, local costs, local regulations. Economists have a name for this pattern, the Balassa-Samuelson Effect, but you don't need the name, you just need the idea. Traded goods, similar price everywhere. Local services, priced by local reality. And coffee is one of the most local things you can buy. But we still haven't answered the deepest question. Why is Norway a high-cost country at all? Why are wages so high there? The answer is productivity. A Norwegian worker, on average, produces more value per hour than a Vietnamese worker. Not because Norwegians work harder as people, but because they have access to more capital, better machines, better infrastructure, decades of accumulated investment. When a worker has better tools, their time becomes more valuable. And when their time is more valuable, they can demand higher wages. And when wages are higher across the whole economy, everything priced in local time becomes more expensive. including coffee. This is exactly what's happening in Vietnam right now. As Vietnam industrializes, accumulates capital, and raises productivity, wages are rising, and prices are rising with them. Slowly, Vietnamese coffee is becoming less of a $1 miracle and more of a normal price. The cheap coffee is not a feature of being Vietnamese. It's a feature of being in an earlier stage of economic development. Norway wasn't always expensive. It got there, and the mechanism was always the same: savings, investment, capital accumulation, productivity. Here's where it gets counterintuitive. When you travel from a rich country to a poorer one, your money suddenly feels like a superpower. You feel wealthy. Everything seems cheap. You tip generously. You upgrade your hotel. You eat at restaurants every day. But you weren't actually richer in Vietnam. Your income was still designed for your home economy. Your rent back home, your bills, your normal life, all priced at Norwegian levels. The cheap coffee felt like a gift, but it was just a different price language. You were briefly fluent in it. And here's the most counterintuitive thing of all. In terms of real purchasing power, the $1 coffee is not necessarily cheaper for the Vietnamese person than the $7 coffee is for the Norwegian. The price numbers look different, but the sacrifice is similar. This is what economists mean when they talk about purchasing power parity. Prices are not comparable across economies without adjusting for what those prices actually cost the people who live there. A dollar in Vietnam is not the same dollar as a dollar in Norway. Same name, very different weight. So what does any of this mean practically? First, if you ever move or travel for work, don't just compare salaries in the same currency. A $60,000 salary in a low-cost city can buy you more comfort than a $90,000 salary in an expensive one. The number on the contract is not the whole story. The cost of living is the rest of the story. Second, when prices rise in your country, it's rarely one single cause. It's all those layers: labor, rent, energy, taxes, regulation, each nudging the final price upward. Understanding which layer is moving helps you understand what's actually happening in your economy. Third, when you see a country with cheap prices and assume it's poor or underdeveloped, pause. It might simply be at a different stage of the same road that Norway already walked, and that road has a clear direction. As capital grows, as tools improve, as productivity rises, prices rise too. Cheap prices today are often just a preview of what comes next. Vietnam won't always sell coffee for $1, and that's not a loss. That's progress. A cup of coffee is one of the most ordinary things in the world. You order it without thinking. You drink it while doing something else. You barely notice the price. But that small cup holds an entire economy inside it. The wages of the barista, the rent of the building, the productivity of the machines, the taxes of the government, the savings of the investors who built the cafe, the decades of capital that made the country what it is today. The next time you pay more than expected for a coffee somewhere, you're not being overcharged. You're reading a price signal that tells you something real about the place you're in. And the next time you pay surprisingly little, you're not finding a bargain. You're temporarily visiting someone else's economy and borrowing their price language for a moment. The world is not random. Prices make sense. You just need the right lens to read them. If this made your next coffee a little more interesting, share it with someone who always complains about prices. And subscribe, because next week we're going to look at something that happens in your wallet every single month, completely silently, and almost nobody notices it.